Hello, everybody. Big warm welcome to all of you. I love these Tuesday talks when we are talking to somebody like Joan, who's a super trooper, partly because it's a window onto people's women's lives, basically. We've just celebrated International Women's Day, and that's obviously a day to celebrate all those high profile people all over the world who fight for rights for women. But I feel very strongly that there is an absolute army of older women who keep us going in ways that are totally unacknowledged and unrecognised, and by which I mean that they are often leading lights in things like charities and in their local community, and also of course within their own families, where they give an enormous amount of support, all for nothing. You know, it's unsung heroines in my view. And so I'm delighted to talk to Joan today because she's very involved in a very interesting and important initiative and charity, which she's going to tell us all about. So Joan, big warm welcome to you. You live down in St Ives in Cornwall. Am I right? Have you always lived in Cornwall?
No, I'm from Edinburgh originally. So I've lived all over the place: Edinburgh, Oxford, Plymouth, Hong Kong, and here. But I've lived here longer now than anywhere else.
Okay, and so was Cornwall somewhere that you went because of work, or you know, why did you go to Cornwall?
When my husband left the Navy and took early retirement, we were searching for a business, and we ended up in St Ives by pure chance, really, and bought a shop that became a country store in St Ives.
Wow. Okay. You don't run that anymore?
No. We sold that about 10 years ago, but we ran it for 27 years. So it was a sort of a second life, because I was a nurse originally. So two strings to my bow, really.
Yeah, interesting. And do you reckon that you're now accepted as a local, or are you still seen as an outsider?
Yeah, we'll always be an outsider, almost a local, because I did win the St Ives Citizen of the Year award for the charity work that I do some time ago, and that was quite something for somebody to win that who isn't from St Ives. But no, we'll always be an incomer.
Yeah. A bit of trivia, which was on Richmond Osman's House of Games. Don't tell me that watching television you learn nothing. And it was how many people in the last census put Cornish as their main language, and it was 600 and something people put Cornish as their main language.
They are teaching it in schools now.
Which is quite interesting. Anyway, by the by. So let's come on to what we're here to talk about, in fact, which is this experience that you've had with, do you say Belarusian or Belarusian? Belarusian children in this charity. So I want to know all about it, basically. It came out of the terrible nuclear accident, which was rated as one of the worst ever. There has been one since that rates at the same level, so I read. And but this was, you know, a catastrophe basically. And obviously that whole area around Chernobyl was poisoned with radiation. And so tell us about this charity then, and how you got involved in it.
Thank you. Well, the charity is the Chernobyl Children's Lifeline. And I heard about it in 1996 when I was at home one day doing my ironing, listening to Debbie Thrower on the radio. Our children had left home by then, and the charity was talking about bringing groups of children to the UK for respite breaks away from the sort of daily drip feed of radiation that they're exposed to. And I thought, oh, I could do that. And I talked to my husband, and I went into work the next day and spoke to all the girls that worked for us. And they all thought that they might like to get involved as well, which was rather nice. And I then contacted the charity and was told I needed to raise X number of £1,000 to pay for the airfares and documentation, etc., for a group of children, and to go through police checks and all the rest of it, and find my host families and set up a programme of events for the time that the children were here. And we decided that we would give it a go, which we did. And this was in, I think, November 1996. And in April 1997, Easter time, we had our first group of 12 Belarusian children. Very excited, quite nervous. I think we were as nervous as the children were. We didn't speak a word of Russian. I think before then I'd hardly even heard of Belarus. And of course, this was only a few years after the breakup of the Soviet Union, which broke up in 1991. So only 5, 6 years later. So it was still a very, very Soviet background. Anyway, we got ready. We prepared a program of events. We talked to our local dentist because we were told that we ought to take them there. And they very kindly said they would give them free dental treatment. And then off we went to Gatwick to meet our group. Stood in trepidation waiting for these children to arrive. And you can spot them a mile off because they all look sort of pallid and grey and just different to our kids coming back from their skiing holidays with their Ray-Ban glasses and what have you. These children were just carrying little carrier bags or holdalls with a few belongings. Usually a present for the host family was the biggest thing that they were bringing. And they arrived quaking, really. But by the time they got here, exhausted, and then put with their host families, usually in two, always in twos, really, so that they can at least communicate with each other. They settled down extremely quickly. And having arrived here at something like midnight, they were up with the lark at 6:30 in the morning, ready for an adventure. And of course, Belarus is a landlocked country, so the majority of the children who come have never seen the sea, unless they've been lucky enough to go by coach, perhaps, to the Black Sea in the south of the Ukraine. And the sea is just the biggest thing for them, and great for their health as well. So they come, they have an amazing month. They are not spoilt, but they are well fed and nurtured and loved and have loads of fun, apart from the day they go to the dentist. But even that, these children are really stoic and they will cope with it amazingly. I've been to the dentist recently and I sat there holding onto the chair and I recited the names of all the children that I'd hosted. So I thought, if they can do it, I can do it too. They ask all sorts of questions, especially the first group, who were not very streetwise children all those years ago. They wanted to know where our police were, because there are police on every corner in Belarus. They wanted to know why we had goods on the pavements outside our shops, because they didn't in those days didn't have enough to put in the shop, far less in the shop window or on the pavement. And why wasn't it stolen if it was on the pavement? They couldn't get over this at all. Why did we have so many different types of sugar? They'd only ever seen a very grey granulated sugar. They had no idea that other sorts existed. And how could we make such delicious soup? Because although they have borscht, which I find actually delicious, the rest of the soup they make is just like grey dishwater usually. So we always send the children back with stock cubes and a recipe for making good vegetable soup when they go back. We had a lovely story with not children that came to St Ives, but to another link of the charity. There are 60 links of the Chernobyl Children Lifeline. And these two little girls arrived and the host mum ran them a big bubble bath and gave them fluffy dressing gowns and invited them to go and have a nice bath before she gave them supper when they arrived. And they were ages and ages and ages and very quiet. And finally she went and knocked on the bathroom door, popped her head around the corner, and the children had taken their clothes off and they were washing their clothes in the bath because that's what they thought the bath was for. So we've had lots of funny experiences. We lost our hearts to this first group of children, undoubtedly. And I mean, this is a long time ago, and I'm still in touch with one of the boys that I had then, and he's now 34. So it makes me feel quite ancient at times when I think about it. But after several months after they went back, and lots of invitations coming from Belarus saying, please, please, please come and visit us, 5 of us decided that we would be brave and we would take ourselves off to Belarus, which we did. In the first wallpapered, anagliptal wallpapered aeroplane I had ever traveled on, with Belavia, which was the Belarusian national airline. In-flight entertainment was a pocket chess set, and tea was served from a stainless steel samovar. And when I sat in my seat and fastened my seatbelt, I then ended up in the lap of the man behind me as my seat collapsed. And I had to take off holding onto the back of the chair, which was what the stewardesses suggested I did. It was extraordinary. They were extremely frosty faced, very, very Soviet. Didn't crack a smile the whole time. Just extraordinary. I have to say it's much better nowadays. We landed in Minsk in snow at the end of September, and we didn't expect that, and we were not dressed for snow at all. And your luggage arrived just through a hatch in a wall in the arrivals hall. There was no, what do you call it, carousel. And you climbed over other people's luggage to find yours, and then filled out a customs declaration, or attempted to, because it was all in Russian. And there was only one light bulb lit in this arrivals hall of the airport. But we managed. We finally got through our luggage all being x-rayed as we left, and lots of frosty-faced officials with huge military hats on, and were met by the families whose children we had hosted. They were so excited. It was just incredible. And we all squashed into various ladas and what have you, and were driven about 4 hours to the city of Mogilov in the dark, but stopped several times by police who jumped out in front of us with torches in black shiny macs. Because at the start of every village or small town, there was a control point where the traffic police were, and who watched everything that went on. And our passports were examined, our visas were looked at again, the driver's documents were looked at, and some dollars sometimes were passed, and then we were allowed to proceed. And we finally arrived in Mogilov at this huge conglomeration of very Soviet-looking flats to stay with our family of one of the boys that we'd hosted. And my heart sank as we went through this great metal door and up some stairs, no light whatsoever. It was pitch black, broken concrete, and an all-pervading smell of sort of rotting cabbage and potatoes. It's a very, very distinctive smell. But we were met by the family, who were just delightful and have remained good friends ever since. And they'd given us their bedroom. They draped artificial flowers over the bed like a bower to welcome us. There was a curtain dividing the bedroom area from the living area that was made of paper clips and all joined together with pieces of plastic or of sweetie wrappers or crisp packets. And this divided one area from the other. And we had a meal at midnight of all sorts of things, like pickled mushrooms, which was, I'd been told, don't eat the mushrooms because they're the most highly irradiated food that there is. But I was almost force-fed them, so you just had to go with the flow, really. And I got very good at spreading out my potato and my tomato on my plate to hide other things and look as if I was eating a lot, when in fact I wasn't. So we spent that week there visiting other children that we had hosted and seeing the city and being told about the war and the culture, and taken to the shops with nothing in them and to the markets, and just getting a real flavour for the country, which was fantastic. We then returned and decided that we ought to start learning Russian. So 3 of us went off to Truro College at night and tried to learn Russian. But we can now speak well enough that we can converse with children, and we can have a telephone conversation with parents and sort problems out, which is not bad. Although I have been told that I speak like a Belarusian peasant, but I think that's fine. But we had a Georgian tutor who was quite feisty, and yes, I remember her saying, "Yeah, you can pass for a Belarusian peasant, no problem at all." I wasn't quite sure how to take that. Subsequent visits to Belarus have been fun and harrowing at the same time. We've had visits out to dachas, the little village houses that they have where they have a little bit of land to grow their potatoes and what have you. These little wooden yellow and blue painted houses that you will have seen probably on photographs of Pripyat and the Chernobyl area, certainly. And there I had my first banya, which is a Russian Turkish, well, Russian sauna, really. And most of the village houses have a little banya, and most of the villages have a central one as well that everybody can go to. But I was just told when we left this flat to take my dressing gown and my soap and my shampoo with me when we went out for a walk. And I thought this was a bit strange. I didn't know where I was going. And we went to this little garden where there was a banya in the corner. And the men went in first and had their sauna. And then I was invited to go in with 2 other Russian or Belarusian women, and decided I would be very British and keep my underwear on. But no, absolutely not. And it was sort of forcefully removed. And then I was sat up on the top plank of this banya, the hottest part, and sweated like mad. And then they came in with iced water and flung it over me and then beat me with silver birch twigs. And then they arrived with a bowl of raspberries as an exfoliant and proceeded to scrub me from head to toe. And I was thinking to myself, gosh, I will never live this down. No, nobody will know in England about this until today. Anyway, amazing things. They have no conception of air travel or what you can bring and what you can't travel with. I've been given a frame of honey from the beehive to bring home to my husband, in my suitcase, or a Jeroboam full of red currant champagne, and just extraordinary. And we've had children arrive. We had one little boy, Victor, who came with a bag dripping with something when he got here. And I unpacked it and it was full of broken glass, Granny's jam. Nothing had been wrapped up, a bottle of vodka with no label on it, which you wouldn't dream of touching, and a packet of dried salted river pike fish that the father had bought as a present for my husband. It went in the shed and we said we'll keep it for a special occasion. And we picked all the glass out of this boy's clothes and washed them, but no idea of how to pack, because they'd never traveled anywhere. But the opposite side to all this, all these funny stories, which have been wonderful, are the sad stories, and the hospitals that we visited, the other institutions that we support, orphanages, the Children's Cancer Hospital, children's homes. So many children are taken away from their families. Their families lose their parental rights because of alcoholism, which is a huge problem in the country. Absentee fathers who've gone off to Moscow to work and never come back. Terrible, terrible deformities that I had never imagined I could ever see in my life. And really makes me question whether these children should be kept alive or not. Loads and loads of children with Down syndrome who are shut away, are never seen. We've had a leader here with our group of children, and we were at a swimming pool and there were some Downs children there, and she wouldn't let the Belarusian children anywhere near them because disability is just not recognised, it doesn't happen, and if it does, then you're shut away. And a lot of the children who are disabled will end up in an adult institution when they're older, unless there's some means of getting them out into foster care. Things are improving, but very, very slowly in that way. There are some foster homes now and some support, but it's a very hard life for people with a disabled child. I've visited some parents or some girls who had disabled children, and the husbands had given them a choice. You either stay with me or you keep the child. And all these women had chosen to keep their children, and the husbands had left. Very often they're living 2 or 3 floors up in an apartment block with no lift and a child in a wheelchair that they can hardly get out. And I've visited a centre where the old babushkas were washing the floor outside, and the woman was coming with her child to the centre to be seen by a doctor on the 2nd floor, and she wanted to leave her pushchair downstairs, and they said no, because it's wet and dirty, you have to carry it up the stairs. So very little empathy, very little kindness on the surface amongst the workforce as a whole, not the individuals. The individual people are delightful, really.
Yeah.
Am I rabbiting on too long?
No, wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, and I'm loving it all. It's a brilliant story. Let's just go back to the first group that you had. So, how old were these children that you hosted?
They were about 11, 12, and then I think we had one boy of 15 who was added to the group at the very last minute because he was in dire straits. But yes, about 11, 12. But generally our groups are usually between 9 and 11 is a good time to have them. It's a good time to give their immune systems a boost before puberty.
And how did those children get chosen for this absolutely amazing treat?
The local education authority are contacted, and depending on whether or not they've had a lot of health problems, a lot of absenteeism from school, and also their social background, whether their parents are struggling, whether they need some support. But generally it's health. Generally it's that they've got a damaged immune system, which nearly all the children have, quite honestly.
Yeah. And you said you were still in contact with the 34-year-old. So tell us a little bit about how his life has worked out.
Quite well, really. He was a delightful boy, a naughty boy, but great fun, which are the ones I like the best, really. And he, because he spoke very good English, he managed to get a job in Mogilov. He was selling pasta to supermarkets. And then he married, and then he went to Moscow, and he now lives and works in Moscow. And he's okay. But I just heard yesterday that his big brother, who I've also had here, he's about 38, Andre, has been extremely ill over New Year and into the end of January. Not with COVID, I couldn't work out what had been wrong with him, but he'd been in hospital for 3 weeks. And his son has got something wrong with his heart. And often his temperature just fluctuates, is not controlled properly. It's impossible to say whether these things are due to Chernobyl or not. It's a great pity they can't definitively say this is due to radiation. And of course, after Chernobyl, doctors were not allowed to write the word Chernobyl or radiation on any legal medical document. There are so many things that have been swept under the carpet. It's very hard to tell.
That was one of the things that I was going to ask you, that it was at the time an extremely secretive government. Did you see the Chernobyl mini-series?
Yes, excellent.
I thought was fantastic. If anybody out there is interested in this, it was a 5-part series with Jared Harris, Emma Watson, and Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, they were the lead characters. They were brilliant in it, and it just documented how this happened, how it happened, the accident. But then what was really interesting, it was a huge insight into the response of this totalitarian regime, basically, which the basic tenet of which was this isn't happening because we say it isn't happening.
Yes.
So, the whole attitude was, well, you're telling me this, but it can't be happening because we're telling you it can't be happening. And all the scientists were dismissed and, ignored. So going from that to a situation afterwards when the danger of it would be exposed, it's extremely unlikely that they're going to allow that to be acknowledged. It's just not going to happen,
Absolutely.
I know it's a change of regime, and of course they, in theory, now they are somewhat independent of the Russian state, somewhat. But so that you continue with this charity. Presumably it's been suspended because of COVID, but
yes, but we project manage another arm to it within Belarus itself. So we have an old Russian school, Soviet school, that we're rebuilding as a respite center for children who are unable to travel because of disability, or because father hasn't signed the documents, or they've just slipped through the net. So we started this about 5 years ago in a clean area of Belarus. And we've had 2 groups of children there this summer and their families. We really want to get the mums there as well, to give them some support, to give them some social life. But our volunteers, of course, in the UK have not been able to go, which is a great shame. But we hope to have people there in the autumn again and building. We have groups of people go out from here to build as well. But it's been hard, and of course it's hard to fundraise at the moment because there's so many other things in this country that need doing before you start thinking about Belarus, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course. Over the time that you've been involved, have you had any impression that things are better or improving, or?
Very definitely. In the city, in Minsk, the capital itself, it's now really quite a buzzing European city on the surface. It's very, very much better, and there are all designer shops are all there. If you've got any money to buy things, everything is available within Belarus now. But the villages are just as they were, possibly worse, some of them, than when I first went 20 odd years ago. So I think things are improving, but the situation at the moment is not good, and I can't really comment about that, but there are some awful problems in Belarus at the moment, which is very sad. Yeah.
Is the problem with the villages that the sort of healthy young ones leave and go to the
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, that happens all over the world, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah.
I'm very familiar with France and the French situation and the French countryside.
Yes.
And, you know, it's left to the old people basically, and old people and children, and then you know, all the healthy young men leave, and you've got the sort of devastation that that leaves in its wake. But I mean, this sounds like the most fantastic project, and presumably, I mean, now you speak Russian well enough to communicate in that way. I mean, it's a huge part of your life.
It's a huge part, yes. I'm so delighted that you know, that I listened to that radio program, because it has absolutely been fantastic. I'm passionate about it. I absolutely love it. The children are fantastic. We've had, I think, 34 here. We've had 300 in St Ives, 50,000 nationally with the charity. And yeah, it gets under your skin, I have to say. Yeah. It becomes all consuming sometimes.
Yeah, but in such a good way. And the thing is that the exposure that we have to other cultures increases understanding, empathy, and you know, a kind of a sense of forgiveness, because you know, I think we can judge from outside a way of life and not really understand it, and it's too easy to judge. You know, say, oh, you know, isn't this terrible, and so on. But there's good and bad in everything, isn't there?
Of course, of course.
We went to Russia when we lived in Stockholm. We took the Russian boat up through the Baltic and went into St. Petersburg, Leningrad, whatever you want to call it. I think it was then St. Petersburg, and stayed for about 3 or 4 days. And I found it shocking. This was pre-Glasnost, so this was about 1988, 89, so it's still very Soviet. And I hadn't believed that it could be. I thought it was propaganda, a lot of it. You know, the Russian way of life must be propaganda, but the shops were empty and people just looked so miserable. I couldn't believe how miserable people looked. And all sorts of things during that 2 or 3 days were such eye-openers. And again, I think the danger of it, because you are now very familiar with this place and you've learnt the language and so on, the danger is that we come in as very wealthy, to them anyway, you know, wealthy Westerners, dressed in jeans and with watches and God knows what that they all covet, and we can sit in judgment over that. We'd have to live it to really understand it, and also understand that there are good things within it.
Yes,
and, you know,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Really lovely, you know, lovely, good people within it. So yeah, and I love the fact that it's for you anyway. It's just been this amazing adventure, really, and getting to know these people really well. It's fantastic.
It continues. Yeah, it's lovely.
Anyway, let's have some questions for you. So, Bryony, what questions have you got for Joan?
Of course. So, Joan, do you know what the radiation level is in Belarus?
No.
Okay.
Because it changes on a daily basis.
Oh, okay.
It moves around in hot spots, and you can never there's no definitive answer to that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And also, this is another question from June. She was also wondering, are the disabilities that you described, are they due to the radiation?
It can't be proved that they are, but I think that you could almost say 90% certain that they are.
Yeah, yes, due to the quantity, I imagine.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I know you said the total number, but how many groups was it that you have hosted in total?
In St Ives,
In
we've had a group every year since 1997, and some years we've had 2. We've had over 300 children, and nationally 50,000. Yeah,
amazing. Eileen would love to know, what sort of education do the children in Belarus receive?
Quite a good education. There are village schools where it's very much learning by rote. Very much as education used to be, where the children sit with their arms crossed and they raise one hand to answer a question. Very small classes in those schools. And then in the cities, they usually go to school in shifts because they're oversubscribed. But I suppose on a par with a grammar school education, and a lot of children will go on to university.
Okay.
It's highly prized, and the children take their education very seriously.
Were they religious, Joan?
Yes, Russian Orthodox usually, or there's a small enclave of Roman Catholic, and then one little part of the country where there are some Muslims, but it's only one tiny area. The Jewish population has practically gone, and that was after the Holocaust. Yeah.
Dorothy would like to know, how did you first raise the funds in your community when you went for that first original visit?
When we invited children for the first time, we did everything. Everything and anything we could possibly think of. We still do. We're doing a virtual balloon race at the moment to raise funds, and we just anything and everything. Cake sales, dinners, talks, collecting pots out in shops, just everything we can think of. Yeah, we try and be inventive.
I'll come in here and just ask you a question. Have you got another, are you planning another trip for children to come over?
We can't bring children this year. In fact, the decision has just been taken because of COVID, because the vaccination program is only just starting in Belarus. It wouldn't be fair to expose people here, or vice versa, really. So there won't be children coming this summer, but we will be having a group next June, definitely. Yeah.
Another question, and this is to do with the pandemic. Do you know how the pandemic has affected the area on top of everything else?
I don't think we're getting the correct information, probably, as to how it's affecting them. The people were told to get on their tractors, drink vodka, plant their seeds for their potatoes and get on with life, and they would be fine. That was the advice they were given. Quite recently, masks became compulsory everywhere, but schools have remained open, and shops and businesses, cafes, everything are still open. But I know that hospitals have been struggling, and they were struggling for PPE. We sent a lot of PPE to Belarus for orphanages and institutions where they had nothing.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I think they've got a Russian vaccine, haven't they? That's been proven to be effective. It is actually working well.
I think they've just started a program using it in Belarus. Yeah.
So hopefully, if they roll that out effectively, what is the population of?
Only about 9 million.
In Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
That's Ukraine, isn't it? Belarus.
No. It's a separate country.
Country, okay.
Yes. Chernobyl is in Ukraine, but because of the wind direction on the day of the disaster, Belarus was 70% contaminated.
Okay, so only 9 million in Belarus, so it's a very small country.
Yes, population.
How many million do you know how many million there are in the whole of the sort of Russian continent? I don't
know. It'll be a huge number, but I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know why I asked that question. I was thinking about vaccine rollout and availability of vaccines. I was thinking of how many people they've actually got to vaccinate. All right, that's a very interesting point at which to stop, but you're hoping to go next year. You're hoping to do all this again next year, and
yes, absolutely, and to go and visit the project and get volunteers out there again as well, maybe in the autumn. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, it's a very worthwhile and amazing thing to be involved with, Joan. And thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me talk about it.
An absolute pleasure. And in my group, we all agreed that you'd had a lot of very interesting things to say, and we were all we all loved the way that you told us your story. So it was brilliant. So thanks very much for that. Very much enjoyed it, and thank you to everybody that's come and joined our group this afternoon. It wouldn't be anything without you in the audience, so appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you. We've got Leonie tomorrow doing some delicious lunches. We've got me on Thursday jumping around. What am I doing on Thursday? Oh, perch bottoms, terribly important. Perch bottoms. And Friday Film Club. Do come to Film Club on Friday if you can. I'd love to see you. Connection's unstable, it's telling me. Anyway, I better go. So bye-bye everybody. Thanks for coming. And again, thank you, Joan. Bye-bye.
Bye.